Kazuko never wanted to come to Kyoto. She had begged for Tokyo. Even Osaka would have been fine. But Kyoto? It was too quiet, too still. The kind of place that remembers things. Even the wind felt like it carried secrets, like it brushed past your neck, not to cool you, but to whisper something you weren't meant to hear. She was a second-year transfer, accepted late into the term. With most dorms full, she was assigned to building K4, a half-forgotten wooden structure on the edge of campus, surrounded by pines that never quite blocked the cold. Her room, 4B, was at the top of 4 long flights of creaking stairs. No elevator. No other girls on that floor, as far as she could tell. The door was slightly off its hinges, and there was a smell in the air. Not unpleasant, but not clean. Like wet wood, or something sweet that had been left too long. What caught her eye, though, was the mirror. An old, full-length antique bolted directly into the wall across from her bed, the kind with a wooden frame that curled at the top like a question mark. It looked out of place, too elegant for a student dorm. She barely noticed it her first night. Too tired to care, she dropped her bags, drew the curtains, and fell into bed. But on the second night, just after brushing her teeth and returning to her room at around 12:10 a.m., something shifted. She passed the mirror without thinking, then froze. Her reflection was wrong. She was facing the mirror, but the girl inside wasn't. The figure in the mirror stood slightly turned, just enough to show the side of her face, her hair a little messier than it should have been, and, strangely, a thin red cut beneath her left eye. Kazuko reached up, half in a daze. Her own skin was smooth, untouched. Then the reflection smiled. She didn't. Kazuko blinked and it was gone. The image was normal again. No blood, no smile. Just her, standing in dim yellow light, face pale with confusion. She laughed nervously, shook her head, and tried to sleep. She didn't look in the mirror the next night, and by the end of the week, she had started draping a towel over it. Still, after midnight, she would sometimes hear soft tapping, always faint, always coming from behind the cloth, as if someone was knocking from the other side. One afternoon in the cafeteria, a girl from the same dorm sat beside her and whispered without greeting, "You're in room 4B, right?" Kazuko blinked. "Yeah, why?" "The mirror's still there?" the girl asked. Kazuko nodded slowly. "Don't look into it after midnight," she said, and picked up her tray and left. Kazuko didn't eat the rest of her meal. Later that week, she found an old photograph at a flea market tucked near Gion. She wasn't sure why it caught her attention. It showed a girl, pale, smiling, standing in a room. Her room, room 4B. But in the mirror behind her, there was no reflection. Not of the girl, not of the room. Nothing. The vendor, an elderly man with cloudy eyes, noticed her staring. "That's Maho," he said. "Student from years ago. They never found her, but the mirror stayed." That night, the towel had fallen again. And when Kazuko passed by at 12:14 a.m., she saw herself. Only, she wasn't alone in the reflection. Something else was there, watching her, smiling, and waiting. Kazuko had stopped sleeping in the dark. At first, it was just an excuse, midterms, she told herself. But the truth was simpler and far more unsettling. She was afraid of the mirror. No matter how tightly she pinned the towel over it, she could still feel something watching her from behind the glass. Her dreams had become strange, distant things, long corridors bathed in moonlight, mirrors standing at the end of rooms, and always, just out of reach, a girl she could never quite see fully. The girl never spoke, but in every dream, Kazuko woke up with the memory of being watched. And then came the touches. Sometimes she'd wake with a faint dampness in her hair.
Once, she found thin red lines on her wrist, too precise to be from sleep, too even to be an accident. She said nothing. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. Who would believe her? She barely believed herself. But all of that changed on a Thursday night when someone else finally saw it too. Raina was a classmate, bright, lively, the kind of girl who filled silence with sugar and noise. She had come by to borrow notes and brought sweet potato mochi as a thank you. They sat cross-legged on the tatami floor, flipping through textbooks and scribbles. Raina chattered about upcoming tests, boys in the literature department, and bad vending machine coffee. But every few minutes, Kazuko's eyes drifted toward the mirror, even with the towel covering it. Raina noticed. "You keep looking over there," she said, gesturing with a mochi sticky finger. "What, afraid your reflection's prettier than you?" Kazuko gave a weak smile. "No, just sometimes weird things happen at night." Raina raised an eyebrow. "Weird how?" Kazuko didn't answer. But later, as Raina zipped up her backpack to leave, she paused mid-motion, staring across the room. "Did you move that towel just now?" Kazuko frowned. "No." They both turned to the mirror. The towel was still there, but it had shifted. The bottom hem hung crooked, pulled slightly to one side, as if something had tugged it gently from behind. "I swear it just moved," Raina said, voice quieter now, like something pressed into it. Without thinking, Kazuko stood up and approached. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the edge of the towel, and there, just beneath the center of the glass, were marks. Long, pale smudges, as if Tingerfinks had dragged upward. They were too high to be hers, too fresh, too real. Raina stepped back, whispering, "That's not normal." Kazuko said nothing. Her throat had gone dry. The mirror, even covered again, now felt alive in the room, present, like a breathing thing. After Raina left, abruptly, leaving the mochi behind, Kazuko sat for a long time without moving. Then, just past 2 a.m., she opened her laptop. She searched everything: Kyoto mirror ghost, room 4B girl missing, mirror urban legend. Most of the pages were junk, forgotten forums, broken links. But buried in a dusty thread from 2013, she found a post titled, "She's Still There After Midnight." It was a list of strange experiences. Some laughed it off, others told stories like hers, reflections not matching movements, faces that weren't their own. And then one comment near the bottom made her go cold. "If you look too long, she learns your face. If she learns your name, she keeps it. Don't say your name near the mirror. That's how she pulls you in." She shut the laptop with a snap. The room was silent, but behind the towel, the silence shifted. Not a tap, not a knock, a whisper. And it said her name. Kazuko didn't sleep that night. She sat in her bed, blanket wrapped around her like a cocoon, eyes fixed on the towel-covered mirror. The whisper still echoed in her ears. Her name, spoken from behind the glass, soft, careful, almost affectionate. She tried to convince herself she had imagined it, that it was the wind or a draft or the building shifting on its old foundations. But deep down, she knew. Something in the mirror had called her, and it knew her name now. By morning, her eyes were dry and red. She skipped her classes, pulled the curtains shut, and sat at her desk with the photograph she had bought days earlier. The girl in the picture, Maho, smiled faintly at the camera, standing in room 4B. Kazuko had memorized every detail by now. The frayed edge of the futon behind her, the bookshelf with 2 missing shelves, the faint stain on the wall near the mirror. It was her room, but in the reflection behind Maho, there was no sign of the girl, Just the bed, the wall, the mirror, and a dark shape pressed into the far corner of the glass. She hadn't noticed that before. She flipped the photo over. On the back, scribbled in faded pencil, was one word: Shiranai. Kazuko didn't speak fluent kanji, but she knew enough. It meant, I don't know, or sometimes, she doesn't know, or worse, she is unknown. The rest of the day passed in silence, no tapping, no movement. But the room felt thick, like the air had weight. Every time she moved, the wooden floor creaked like it was being listened to, watched. That night she left the towel on, but she couldn't stop herself. At 12:17 a.m., she pulled it down, and there she was, the girl, standing behind the glass. She looked like Kazuko, almost exactly. Same shape, same height, same long black hair falling over one eye, but not the same eyes. The girl's eyes were wrong. They were dull, cloudy like water left to rot. She didn't blink. She didn't move. But she was looking. Kazuko couldn't move. Her body was stiff, heart hammering. The reflection raised a hand, slow, careful, and pressed it to the glass. Kazuko stepped back. The girl didn't mimic her. She stayed still, and then without moving her lips, the girl said again, Kazuko. This time, the sound didn't come from the mirror. It came from inside the room. The rule of 3. The next morning, Kazuko tried to talk to Reina. She needed someone to confirm she wasn't losing her mind, but Reina didn't answer her messages. Her texts remained unread. Her phone calls went straight to voicemail. At lunch, she found Reina's friends sitting together near the vending machines. Is Reina sick? Kazuko asked. One of the girls looked confused. Reina? She transferred dorms yesterday. Said she wasn't sleeping well in K4. Didn't she tell you? Kazuko's mouth drooled. No, she didn't. The girl tilted her head. She left this morning. Just like that. Gone. By the time Kazuko returned to her room that night, her hands were trembling. She opened her notebook and wrote it down, like a superstition, like a curse being catalogued. Rule 1. Don't look into the mirror after midnight. Rule 2. Don't speak your name near the mirror. Rule 3. If she knows your name, don't be alone for 3 nights. Kazuko didn't know where the rules came from. They formed in her mind like something half-remembered, something she wasn't sure she had read or maybe dreamed. But she obeyed them. She spent that night in the campus library, sitting under the flickering fluorescent lights, pretending to study. But even there, at 12:10, her phone buzzed once. An unknown number. No caller ID. She picked it up. Nothing. Then a voice. Soft, wet, close. Kazuko. The phone call ended as suddenly as it began. No click, no beep, just silence. Kazuko stared at her screen, the faint glow of the display reflecting back into her eyes. No number, no message, just her name, spoken in a voice she couldn't place, couldn't describe, but now knew too well. She didn't go home that night, not to her room, not to that mirror. Instead, she slept in a beanbag chair tucked deep inside the 24-hour study lounge near the engineering building. Or rather, she tried to sleep. Every time her eyes drifted shut, she felt that girl's breath on her neck, cold, lingering, not imagined. It was the second night. According to the unspoken rule number 3 she had written in her notebook, she had 1 night left. The next day passed in a blur. She skipped class, ate nothing, avoided mirrors. The university bathroom had a row of them above the sinks, and even then she ducked her head, washing her hands with her gaze fixed firmly on the tiles. She saw her reflection twitch at the corner of her eye once, and left with her hands still dripping. By the time night came, she knew she couldn't avoid it anymore. She had to go back. She had to face the third night. She returned to room 4B just before sunset. The hallway was darker than usual. The sensor light at the end of the corridor wasn't working, and the floor creaked louder than it should. As she unlocked her door, she hesitated. The air inside was stale, as if the room had been sealed for days, not hours. Everything was in place, the mirror still covered, the books still open on the desk where she'd left them, the photograph still resting on her pillow. But there was one thing that wasn't hers. A single strand of long black hair lying on the center of her futon. She didn't touch it. Instead, she pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and scanned the room for more. In the corner, just beneath the mirror, she found 3 more strands, curled like they had fallen from someone slowly brushing her hair. Kazuko didn't breathe. She moved to the mirror and with trembling fingers peeled the towel away. The girl was already there, but closer now, too close. Her face pressed against the glass, cheek flat against it, lips curled into a smile so slight it might have been imagined. Her hair moved, slowly, like it was drifting in water. And her eyes had no pupils anymore, just a foggy, milky gray, like the color had drowned long ago. Kazuko didn't move, didn't blink, and for the first time she whispered, not to herself, but to the thing behind the glass, "What do you want from me?" The girl didn't answer, but her hand reached up slowly, fingers brushing the inside of the mirror. She traced something, letters, a word, K-A-Z-U-K-O, and beneath it, 1. Kazuko backed away, heart pounding. The girl tilted her head, smile widening. Then the word changed, right before her eyes, the letters rearranged, T-O-W. Kazuko turned and ran. She didn't know how long she was running, down the stairs, across the quad, past buildings that were dark and empty. She didn't stop until she reached the security office. The guard on duty was a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a thick jacket too big for him. He blinked at her as she burst through the door. "There's something in my dorm, room 4B, someone's in there." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't seem alarmed. "Intruder?" She nodded furiously. He followed her back to the dorm with heavy steps and a ring of keys clanking at his waist. When they reached room 4B, he gestured for her to wait, then unlocked the door and stepped inside first. Kazuko didn't breathe. After a few seconds, the guard peeked out and shrugged. "Nothing's here, miss." She stepped inside slowly. Everything looked untouched. No hair on the bed, no writing on the mirror. The towel was hanging neatly, as if it had never fallen. She stared, disbelieving. There was someone here. She wrote on the glass. She knew my name. The guard gave her a tired look. The old mirrors in this building reflect weird sometimes. Damp gets behind the glass, causes foggy spots. Don't worry. Kazuko didn't argue. What could she say? After he left, she locked the door, then the window. She unplugged the mirror lamp. She turned off the main light. And then, in the dim hush of 1:03 a.m., she sat down on the floor and whispered into the dark, "I know you're still here." The mirror didn't respond, not with movement, not with sound. But on the floor beside her, where nothing had been before, lay her notebook, open and written in a hand that wasn't hers, in ink too dark and thick to be pen. 3. The number 3 stayed in her mind like an echo that didn't fade.
Kazuko stared at the words inked across her notebook, thick, almost wet-looking. It hadn't been there before. She was certain, and even more certain, that it hadn't been written by her hand. The strokes were too precise, too heavy, almost carved. She didn't dare touch the page, not yet. Midnight had come and gone, and now it was the third night. For a moment she considered leaving, running, but to where? This wasn't a thing she could escape by changing rooms or switching buildings. The mirror wasn't just glass anymore. It was a presence, a door, a mouth that whispered her name and counted down like a lullaby for the damned. She reached for the towel, her hand trembling, but didn't remove it yet. Instead, she turned to her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. The university network had mysteriously cut out. Her router flashed with a dead green light. She tried to call Reina again. Still no answer. Then something buzzed. A message. No contact name, no number, just one line. Open it. She's waiting. Kazuko froze. The message disappeared on its own. She stared at the mirror. Silence. Stillness. Then 3 soft taps. From the other side. She couldn't tell if they were real or imagined, but she moved toward the mirror anyway, hands cold, throat dry, something inside her whispering, "Don't do it," while another voice, quieter, deeper, murmured, "You've already been chosen." And maybe it was right, because when she finally pulled the towel away, there was no reflection. Not of the room, not of her, nothing. Only a dark hallway stretching endlessly backward inside the glass, lined with old wooden floors and flickering lights, identical to the dorm, but wrong, too still, too empty. And far down that corridor, a small figure stood, not moving, just watching. Her. Kazuko backed away, but her legs didn't work the way they should. It felt like the air had thickened, as if the room were filled with water. Everything was muffled, slower. She turned to run, but the door was gone. There was no wall behind her, only mirror. She spun, panicked. Every surface in the room was glass now, reflecting nothing, echoing everything. She was inside it, inside the mirror, and the girl, the figure, was getting closer, not walking, just appearing a little closer with every blink. No footsteps, no sound, just presence. Kazuko tried to scream, but her voice didn't work here. There was no breath in this place. She turned and ran down the mirrored corridor, reflections stretching infinitely around her. Her own image blinked from every angle except behind her, where the other girl followed. Only the girl had no reflection. She was real. Everything else was not. Kazuko didn't know how long she ran. The halls curved like a spiral. Lights flickered, died, reappeared. Some showed images of herself from earlier, crying, sleeping, laughing. Other mirrors showed things that had never happened. Her reflection clawing at her throat, screaming silently, bleeding from her eyes. She collapsed eventually, somewhere in the dark, and when she looked up, the girl was standing above her. She leaned in, and for the first time, she spoke, with her mouth. Not a whisper, not a name, but a question. "Will you stay with me?" Kazuko tried to move, but her limbs didn't respond. The girl tilted her head, and then smiled, like a child asking for a bedtime story. "They always leave, but I learned your name first." When Kazuko's body was found 2 days later, she was sitting upright on her futon, eyes open, pulse steady.
mouth slightly parted. But she wouldn't respond. Doctors said it was catatonia, psychological trauma, stress-induced dissociation. They moved her to a hospital in Osaka. The university quietly removed the mirror, said it was a hazard, said it had a troubled history. But the room 4B, remained empty, and at night, the new towel placed over the wall bolts always fell, even though there was no mirror left. Some nights, students passing by say they hear knocking from the inside, 3 taps, then silence, then a whisper. Kazuko.
It was spring when they reopened room 4B. Almost a full year had passed since Kazuko's incident, though the university never used her name publicly. On paper, it was listed as a nonviolent psychiatric break, a matter of privacy, a matter of liability. But in the dormitory, students whispered. Some remembered her, others pretended not to. But the mirror? No one spoke about that. Officially, it had been removed, dismantled, and sent to storage. Unofficially, no one saw it being carried out. And that was the strange thing. Even the dorm's maintenance team denied ever touching it. The room sat empty for 2 semesters. But in April, with an incoming surge of new students and a shortage of housing, administration decided to open it again. The walls were repainted, the floor polished, a new mattress placed, and over the empty space where the mirror once hung, they mounted a small corkboard, complete with a welcome flyer, dorm rules, and an emergency evacuation map. It looked like any other room now. Ordinary. Forgettable. Until Natsumi moved in. Natsumi was a cheerful freshman from Hokkaido, smart, curious, and mostly unfazed by the idea of an old room. She had arrived late due to family reasons, and room 4B was the last one available. She wasn't superstitious. She didn't mind creaky wood or drafty windows. In fact, she thought the room had character. The first few nights were uneventful. She decorated the corkboard with Polaroids, pinned up pastel sticky notes, arranged her desk just so. She even brought a mirror of her own, a compact folding one she placed beside her makeup bag. But by the 4th night, she noticed something strange. Every morning, the mirror had moved, just slightly. It would be tilted at an angle she never left it, sometimes closed, sometimes open. Once it was lying face down on the floor. She assumed it was her own carelessness, until the 6th night. That was the night she woke up and found a second mirror in the room. A tall, antique one, bolted to the wall, right where the corkboard used to be. Natsumi screamed. The dorm supervisor came. The board was still there, completely intact. No mirror. But Natsumi was pale, trembling. She insisted it had been real. She described it exactly. The curved wooden frame, the faded brass bolts, the height, down to the faint crack on the lower right edge. The same crack Kazuko had seen. The supervisor looked concerned, but told her kindly, "There's no mirror in that room. Hasn't been in years." Natsumi nodded, apologized. But that night she didn't sleep. She stared at the corkboard. And at midnight, she saw something move behind it. The shadows in her reflection. Even though there was no glass, even though she wasn't standing near it, her reflection was smiling, and she wasn't. A week later, a new thread appeared on an old Kyoto student forum. It was titled, "Has anyone else lived in room 4B? Something weird is happening." No replies.
Then one comment appeared from a username that hadn't posted in nearly a year. If she knows your name, she keeps it. Don't speak it near the mirror. Don't stay 3 nights alone. The comment vanished 5 minutes later, but Natsumi had already read it. And on her compact mirror, drawn in faint fog, were 3 letters the next morning. O-N-E. The word sat silently on the mirror. Just fog, no ink, no pressure marks. It looked like someone had breathed it there from the inside. 1. Natsumi wiped it off immediately, her hands cold, her heart faster than she wanted to admit. She didn't tell anyone. What would she say? That someone was writing inside her compact? That a mirror had appeared, then vanished again? No one would believe her, just like no one had believed Kazuko. And Natsumi didn't know that name yet. Not yet. That night she stayed at a friend's room on the 2nd floor. They watched a horror movie together, which felt almost ironic, and fell asleep to the sound of late-night ramen delivery ads playing on someone's phone. When she returned to room 4B the next morning, her compact mirror was open again. No fog, no message, just something stranger. A reflection that didn't quite match. She tilted her head to the right. The reflection moved a second later, just slightly, as if it were thinking about whether to follow her or not. She started keeping a notebook. She didn't know why, it just felt right. A place to write everything down in case she forgot, or worse, in case she started doubting herself. Day 7. Mirror fogged, said 1. Day 8, mirror delayed reflection. Day 9, woke up to find my hair braided. I never braid my hair. That night, something new happened. As she sat at her desk trying to write, she heard a soft clack behind her. She turned. Her compact mirror was closed. Then it opened on its own. Just a little. She didn't touch it, and then, whispered so faintly she couldn't tell if it was a thought or sound, came a single question. "What's your name?" Natsumi froze. The voice wasn't hers. It wasn't in the room. It was in the mirror. And suddenly she remembered the comment from the forum. If she knows your name, she keeps it. Natsumi stood up, slammed the mirror shut, and whispered to herself, "You don't get it. You don't get my name." But it was too late, because on her notebook, on the next page she hadn't written yet, a new word had already appeared. 2. She couldn't stay silent anymore. The next day, Natsumi went to the campus library. She searched every database, every archived bulletin, student disappearances, mental breakdowns, dormitory rumors. And finally, deep inside a locked drawer in the library's restricted incidents archive, she found a name. Kazuko Ishihara, age 20, transferred from Osaka, lived in room 4B. Hospitalized 1 year ago, no clear diagnosis, still unresponsive, last known condition, catatonic. There was no mention of a mirror, but someone had left a sticky note on the file cover. No signature, no date, just 2 words, "Not gone." That night, Natsumi returned to her room. The mirror was back. Not the compact one, not an illusion, the full-length antique mirror. It stood against the wall, frame cracked, wood faded, glass cold. And this time, her reflection wasn't there at all. Only someone else. Someone with braided hair. someone with clouded eyes, and someone who smiled as the word on the glass changed again. 3.
3. The number was written in frost, not fog, not ink. Frost, as if the mirror's surface had dropped below freezing, as if something on the other side breathed in air that didn't belong to this world. Natsumi didn't scream. She didn't run. Something inside her had already started to numb. The kind of numb that comes after fear, when the brain no longer bothers asking if it's real. It just accepts and waits. She stared into the mirror, but the girl inside wasn't staring back. She was pacing. Inside the glass, inside the twisted corridor of reflection, the girl walked slowly from one side to another, bare feet silent on a floor made of darkness. Her hair was longer now, dragging. Her arms hung strangely, as if she didn't know what they were for. And on the wall behind her, a wall Natsumi didn't have, names were written. Dozens, hundreds, all of them faint. Except one, Kazuko, carved deeper than the rest. Natsumi stepped back, and the girl stopped pacing, then turned, and for the first time, looked angry. That night, Natsumi dreamt of a room that didn't exist, a room beneath room 4B. She saw herself standing in front of a mirror, except the mirror was no longer vertical. It was a trapdoor, hinged at the floor. She pulled it open. Inside was nothing. Then the reflection of herself inside that trapdoor smiled and whispered, "It's your turn now." She woke up sweating, her pillow damp, her compact mirror on her chest, wide open despite being zipped inside her bag before bed. And written across the glass, in something that looked disturbingly like old blood, was a sentence, "You looked too long." She ran to the bathroom, washed her hands, her face. She didn't dare look at the mirrors above the sink. She turned each one face down. And in the silence that followed, she heard something new, scratching from inside her backpack. The trade. Natsumi didn't go to class. She didn't eat. She barely breathed. That afternoon, she returned to the library, desperate to find anything more about the mirror. She flipped through old folklore books, urban legend compilations, cursed object registries. Then, in a self-published collection from 1983, titled Kyoto's Forgotten Shadows, she found a single paragraph that made her skin crawl. In the northern dormitories of the old Imperial Academy, it was said that certain mirrors could take from you the thing most easily seen, but least truly known, the self. Some students saw their reflections fall behind. Some heard their names whispered until they no longer belonged to them. And some, they say, were pulled inside, not violently, but gently, as part of a trade. The girl inside wants to live again, but she needs someone to take her place. Natsumi's hand shook. A trade. She realized now the girl wasn't just haunting her. She was offering her a deal. The choice. That night, Natsumi stood in front of the mirror. Her real mirror, the antique one, which shouldn't have been there. She stared at the girl inside. The girl didn't pace anymore. She stood still, waiting. The names on the wall behind her had grown dimmer. Even Kazuko had begun to fade. And in its place, Natsumi was being scratched into the wall, slowly, letter by letter. The girl raised her hand, placed it flat against the glass. Her lips didn't move, but Natsumi heard the words clearly. "Say yes. Let me out. You don't have to be afraid anymore." Her breath caught.
Her hand, almost without thinking, began to rise, fingers outstretched, just inches away. And for a moment, a terrifying, beautiful moment, she thought of saying yes, of stepping back, letting the girl crawl through, letting it end, letting herself disappear. But then, a sound, tiny, from inside her drawer. She turned. Her notebook, the one she'd been writing in, had fallen open, and on the last page, in shaky handwriting she didn't remember writing, were the words, "If you say yes, you stay forever. Kazuko said yes too." Natsumi turned back to the mirror. The girl was closer now, closer than glass should allow, and smiling, a smile that didn't belong to anyone living. Natsumi didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor with her back against the opposite wall, facing the mirror as if it might move, might breathe, might break open if she dared blink. The girl inside had not spoken again, but she didn't leave either. She stayed, watching, smiling. Sometimes she would tilt her head to match Natsumi's breath. Sometimes she would reach her hand to the glass as if trying to remember what it felt like. And behind her, that wall of names had grown longer. Kazuko's was nearly gone now, faded, cracked, like it had been sanded down. Natsumi's was half scratched, just 2 letters left. The next morning, Natsumi left the room for the first time in 2 days. She didn't pack. She didn't say goodbye. She walked with her hoodie up, eyes to the ground, afraid of every window's reflection, every puddle, every polished doorknob. She avoided glass like it might scream her name. She ended up in the old Student Records building, a quiet place on the edge of campus, barely used, rumored to be haunted by its own stories. She wasn't there for safety. She was looking for Kazuko, the girl before. In the file room, she found a stack of outdated medical transfers. Most were routine, sprained ankles, migraines, fatigue, but one stood out. The name was blacked out with pen. Only one word was left untouched. Catatonic. No school photo, no contact info. But tucked inside the folder was something no one had removed. A drawing, rough, made with a pencil almost out of lead. It showed a mirror and 2 girls, one inside, one out. Both of them had no faces. On the back, in faint, shaky writing, "She waits, she listens, she learns your name." Natsumi stuffed the drawing into her pocket and left before anyone saw. That night, the mirror was brighter than usual, almost glowing, as if something behind it was moving, preparing. The reversal. Midnight came slowly. Natsumi sat again on the floor, with notebook in lap. She wrote only one sentence. "I will not give you my name." The mirror pulsed, not with light, but with silence, a thicker silence than usual, as if even the sounds of the world, the wind, the radiator, her own breath had been swallowed. Then the girl stepped closer, close enough that her face filled the frame, close enough that her breath fogged the glass from the inside. She leaned in, and for the first time, her smile broke, not into a frown, but into something older, something hollow. Her lips parted. Her voice didn't whisper this time. It pressed into Natsumi's mind like an echo shoved through a wall. If I cannot take you, then bring me someone else. Natsumi's eyes widened. The girl pressed a hand to the inside of the mirror, and this time she saw something beneath her fingernails. Skin, flesh, human. Kazuko's, or the last girl before her? The implication was clear. The curse could be passed. All she had to do was say someone else's name. Someone real. Someone alive. The whisperer becomes. Natsumi shook her head violently. "No!" she whispered aloud. But the mirror pulsed again, and from the glass came not just her own reflection, but dozens, hundreds, every girl the mirror had ever learned, all staring back, all smiling, all waiting, and behind them, standing like a queen among dolls, was the girl, her face now fully formed, her voice smooth, ancient, and hungry. "It's not about you, Natsumi. It's about who comes next." And on the notebook in Natsumi's lap, new ink appeared from nowhere, bleeding through the page. A single line. "Names are doors." Natsumi stared, and slowly, without knowing why, she began to think of someone, a girl from her old school, someone who used to bully her, someone who once said, "No one will ever remember your name." Natsumi's lips parted. The mirror glowed. The girl inside leaned forward, and for the first time, Natsumi felt something pull, not from behind the mirror, but from within herself. Natsumi stood frozen, her breath shallow, her mind caught in a violent storm between instinct and fear. The girl in the mirror waited, face inches from the glass, her eyes hollow but expectant. All around her, the wall behind the mirror glowed faintly, the names of those who had come before. Hundreds of them, maybe more. Kazuko, Aiko, Misaki, Yuna, Tomomi. Too many to count. And now, halfway carved at the bottom, Natsumi. 2 letters left. The voice slithered back into her head. "Bring me someone, anyone. Say a name." Natsumi gripped the edge of her futon. Her mouth opened just slightly. And that was when she realized something horrifying. It wasn't just about survival. It was a test of cruelty. If she gave a name, any name, she would be free. The mirror would shift, the girl would crawl out, and someone else would be trapped, and no one would ever know. She could go back to her life, forget this ever happened. The almost. She thought of Reina, the girl who had once helped her study, who had smiled, who had been kind, who had vanished suddenly after seeing something she shouldn't have. Had Reina said a name? Had she passed the curse to Kazuko? And Kazuko to her? Was this how it always continued? A thread of whispered betrayals? A chain of survival through sacrifice? The mirror pulsed again. The air turned heavy. Time slowed. One name. That's all it wanted. A single syllable to escape its prison. Natsumi closed her eyes, and in her mind a name echoed. Someone who had hurt her once. Someone who wouldn't be missed. Someone she didn't even like. Her lips trembled. Her throat tightened. She almost said it. Almost. the breaking. But instead, she bit her tongue hard. The taste of blood shocked her back into herself. Her mouth shut, and in a voice shaking but certain, she whispered, "No." The mirror responded instantly. The girl inside didn't scream, didn't shout. She smiled wider, as if she'd been waiting for that answer all along. Then everything changed. The mirror began to crack, not from a single point, but from everywhere. Hairline fractures spread like lightning, spidering across the glass. The names behind it flickered, dimmed, then burst into bright flame before vanishing completely. Kazuko's name, gone. Natsumi's, gone. The girl inside, still smiling, but her face began to flicker too, like a candle behind dying glass. And for the first time, her hand pressed flat against the mirror and left no mark. She was losing her grip. The prison was collapsing because Natsumi had broken the cycle. The other side. Natsumi woke up the next morning with sunlight on her face. The mirror was gone. Not broken, not shattered. Gone. As if it had never been there. Just a blank wall. And on her notebook, only one sentence remained. "You kept your name." She transferred out of the dorm the next week. No one questioned her. No one remembered what room she'd stayed in. No one even remembered Kazuko. The university eventually remodeled the building. Room 4B was turned into storage. The floor was tiled over, the number removed from the door. But sometimes, students walking past that section of the hallway say they hear footsteps from behind the wall, and soft breathing. And if you linger too long, if you're alone, just after midnight, you might hear a voice say, "I remember yours."